Hey scrappers, if you're looking to figure out what materials you should sell this week or hold this week, now is the time to do it. Our weekly report is going to give you that information, up-to-date market news, pricing. Let's get right into it and we'll talk about it inside. Hey scrappers, Tom here from the iScrap app, and today is Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. We are streaming live, so if you have questions for us, please let us know. Here we are in the second week of the Trump administration, so we're trying to figure out what's going on. You got different secretaries being confirmed, you got policies being talked about, but nothing of real substance that's going to affect the commodities markets yet. Don't forget, things take months to develop, not days to develop. So those are things that we're looking for. Now, what's going on with these markets in the last week? I'd like to talk about copper first and foremost, just because that's where everyone's head really goes to. Now, we've seen copper in the last week overall drop by about 8 cents per pound. Nothing too crazy. In my mind, copper prices are still 25 to 50 cents higher than I thought that they would be going into January, let alone having February starting next week. So when I look at copper and I look at some of the global demands, the global supply, everything seems to be flowing really well. And now we're going to start to look at what's going to happen with things like tariffs, what's going to happen with the demands that are out there. These are things that we don't know the answers to. But an article that I did read on Reuters talks about some of the tariffs. And I just want to touch on some of these because it really will set us up for a really good live session. So when I see this, the U.S. plans to impose tariffs on imports of aluminum, copper, steel, and other materials to boost domestic production, with U.S. aluminum and copper buyers facing price hikes due to heavy import reliance, with 38% of the material of copper being imported and 82% of the aluminum being imported. That's going to be one of the things that could potentially have higher costs with tariffs. But tariffs are not used to just imply harm. They're really used as more of a negotiating tactic. So when we look at these tariffs that could be put into the markets, they don't scare me right now because they're a tool. 8, 10, 12 months from now, if they're in there and we start to see prices move downwards, then they'll be a negative tool. But for now, don't let the word tariff scares you when it comes to copper prices, aluminum prices. I think that they're really going to be one of the things that kind of affects worldwide trade. Some of the other things from this article that we linked to, we talked about how multiple companies, Rio Tinto and Alcoa, are probably not going to be suffering losses. They're going to be shifting some of those price shifts, if tariffs hit, to U.S. automakers. So we may see auto rates going higher, but these are things that we just don't know until they really start happening. But right now, I'm not overly concerned because we're in the negotiating phase. We're in the honeymoon phase. We're in the negotiating phase. I don't think that anyone should be overly concerned on where the markets are or where they're going to be going. But when I look at copper prices, still strong numbers. The reported prices that many of you put out there are really, really strong. So when we see strong numbers, we want to be able to see those prices continuing to be reported, which many of you are. And we're seeing a nice, strong, steady surge of numbers going out there. So we really are happy with this. Now, when I look at other copper information and news, right, I read this article from Recycling Today, and it said that 4.5 million metric tons of secondary copper was made globally, and 2024 outputs will probably rise year over year. So when I see the copper that's out there, when I see the demand that's out there, I think scrap prices are going to be really good in 2025. I don't think we're going to have the crazy surge like we saw in May of last year, but I do think that we're going to see some copper prices at a relatively solid number, giving you stability when it comes to selling scrap. Now, when I look at a lot of these prices, when I look at a lot of these markets, how are the copper markets going to affect the other non-ferrous markets? Well, it's going to be a little mixture. I don't know, because aluminum has been so strong for the last 12 months. Really, in my opinion, the strongest baseline metal. I'm really happy with where the aluminum markets are. Now, Copper, I also am very happy where the copper markets are. And if people are holding on for some type of price increase, I don't know. Look at some of the reported prices. You see a lot of green here with a lot of these prices continuing to be on a positive side of things. Sheet aluminum, 47, 50 cents a pound. We're seeing really strong numbers and really strong demand. So I'm really happy with those. But again, it's just going to be one of those things. Look, 47 cents a pound on sheet. We're going to see these numbers. We're going to watch these numbers. And with your prices being reported in, we're going to continue to see where the markets are going. But when we see a lot of these markets and we look at the auto sector, the building sectors, again, everyone's going to want to talk about tariffs, Trump, trade, right? These are all things we can talk about, but we're in week number 2, people. You can't really just have these things change overnight. So these are some of the things that we're looking for. Now, one thing that I did really enjoy, steel prices have gone up in back-to-back weeks. We've now seen a $20 to $45 per ton shift. So that's something that really hasn't been happening. So seeing those prices rise, I saw light iron reported prices for a while below $100 a ton from many people. So starting to see those prices rise is great. What I want to be able to see is, where's the auto industry going to go? Where the auto industry goes is really going to be where a lot of these other metals follow. Aluminum prices follow. Copper prices on the EV side, steel prices, strong demand is going to continue to bring material out from warehouses into production, into consumers' driveways, and into their homes. Those are going to be things that are going to spur the market. So we do expect the Trump administration to be pushing a lot of strong economic growth. That should lead to higher price demands. But again, where they're going to go is going to take time. They talk about things like oil, right? I know that we're not here to trade oil, but oil affects everything. So if we're able to start to see oil prices going from the $78 to $80 range down to 70, 73 by the end of this year, that's a potential 12% decrease. Transportation costs will be less. Processing costs will be yet less. Your actual cost will be less because you'll be consuming the same amount of fuel at lower prices. Now it's going to be, does the world follow suit? If the world does follow suit, if OPEC starts to produce more oil and gas, and the US does it at the same time, that drill baby drill motto, then we will start to see commodity prices increasing because the direct correlation of transportation costs decreasing. Now, we had a couple of questions I'm going to touch on before I get to a couple of other markets. But one of the questions we saw here last week, Tom, am I wasting my time taking apart flat screen TVs? Now, flat screen TVs or smart TVs could be a good item because the board inside of them is similar to like a lower grade computer. So you may not be wasting your time. But if you don't know how to properly dispose of the screen, that's where you may start to have problems. I don't, take those screens apart at my facility. We don't take them. So I can't tell you if you're wasting your time. If you are getting a smart board out of it, you may be doing okay, but there's not going to be the amount of copper that once was in monitors. So I don't know if it's a great thing. I'm going to tell you that's a figure out what your time is worth type of a thing. Next question, a similar on the e-scrap topic. Why do e-scrap prices fluctuate so much, especially between CPU chips and the like? Now, our division through Rockway Recycling is buying memory, Rambus, CPU chips. So we have large ranges when it comes to the prices on these things. And one of the primary reasons that there's such range in e-scrap is the amount of gold or precious metal content. Now, some of the chips that are out there have big copper heat sinks on them, weighing them down, another layer of processing. Some of the chips have aluminum. Some of them have gold on one side, but not on the other. So a lot of it has to do with the material content and the material value. Higher gold, higher price. Higher copper, lower price because it offsets the gold and it offsets the work. So these are things you need to look into. But if you're looking for pricing, RockawayRecycling.com has free shipping on a lot of these different e-scrap purchases. So please check that out. Now, when we're looking at some of these things, and a lot of people are talking about chips, a lot of people are talking about infrastructure, data centers. What I'm really happy to see is strong push for lowering oil prices. That's going to help all commodities on our side of things, the copper, the aluminum, brass, copper, steel side of things. That's going to help all commodities. On the other side, if we start to see strong domestic production and factory increasing in the United States, again, keeping more material here, that closed loop instead of exporting things, keeping it in this country decreases those transportation costs. So hopefully we start to see more steel mills and other production smelting facilities come into fruition in the next few years. That will increase our domestic demand. That will increase our national our national security, just because we're not going to rely on other countries for these metals, and our closed recycling loop for the scrap industry will increase, and that's what we'd like to see. Now, other markets I'll briefly touch on: catalytic converters. Nothing exciting to talk about here. We did see platinum and palladium prices take small increases, up week over week. Platinum's up maybe up 2.5%. Palladium's up another 2%. Rhodium's down 1%. But I'm not really jonesing for big increases in these prices. Even if we do see an increase in the auto demand this year, even with the EV mandate disappearing, even with credits disappearing, we're not going to see enough of a demand globally to increase the value for catalytic converters to the levels that we saw 2 years ago. So what we've seen is 8 to 10 months of solid, stable prices. RRCats.com continuing to provide free shipping on those OEM cats and 10-day price locks. So you can always sell your cats to us through a very, easy to use system that just makes it nice. But again, I don't see catalytic converter numbers jumping. If someone's holding on to a lot of them, that's well and good. Maybe it's a rainy day fund, but I don't see a huge demand or increase for catalytic converter scrap anytime soon, especially as automakers really moved from palladium, which for a while was higher priced than platinum, to more platinum based catalytic converters. Maybe you'll see platinum prices increasing. If we saw platinum go over 1050 an ounce this year, I'd be really happy. I think we're at 974 this morning. So hopefully we can see that, but I don't have a super high optimistic point of view when it comes to the cap prices this year. Another area that we will touch on briefly: stainless and nickel continuing to be poo-poo. 52-week lows. Stainless prices are continuing to drop down. We see numbers 25 to 30 cents per pound for 304 stainless. Scrappers, I said to hold stainless for a while. I'm out on that. I've sold everything that I kind of had. And if you're holding on to things, I don't see price increases coming. So, you can keep holding it, and eventually, like stocks, they will probably go up. But when I see a lot of these stainless prices, they're stable, but they're not moving. 304 stainless at 32 cents a pound nationally. I don't know. That's just, it is where it is. And unfortunately, that flows into things like Inconels and other specialty rare earth alloys. So, materials are there, demand's not really as much. And with a lot of new nickel mines coming into fruition this year, as we've talked about in recent weeks, I don't see strong growth opportunities coming anytime soon. Last question that I had from last week: at what thickness does aluminum go from sheet to plate? So it depends on how your yard is looking at things. If the piece of aluminum is dirty, has steel rivets on it, there's no thickness it's going to matter. It's going to go probably as a sheet aluminum. If you have something like a 6061 plate, again, you're not going to have thin 6061 plates. So an eighth of an inch, 3/16ths of an inch should be okay to be able to qualify. But if it's dirty at all, you're not going to really be able to get much of an upgrade. Knowing the grade and watching a lot of our YouTube videos is going to help that. So, Carl, I just saw a question: why are the stainless steel markets so low? We talked about this briefly. Stainless steel markets are so low because nickel prices are so low. Nickel demand is not there right now. There's no big thing that nickel's going for. If they were going to really be pushing it in EV batteries, that would be a super win, but that doesn't look to be happening right now. And we also have a lot of mines that are coming into fruition, into production in 2025. So more supply, less demand, lower prices. It really just kind of works hand in hand. That's how the markets are. So thank you again for the question, Carl. Scrappers, today is Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. If you have questions, let us know. If you've sold something recently, post that price online. Any other questions, let us know. My name is Tom from the iScrap app. Any other ideas, we'll talk to you next week about them. And until then, I'll scrap you later.